90% of businesses in the world are small businesses, and they have traditionally been completely left out of the equation on climate action. Solution providers aren't targeting to help small businesses, and small businesses are just trying to survive. It's just this massive global problem, which means it's an incredible opportunity. And so Intuit recently committed this past week that we are going to help 1 million small businesses cut their emissions by 50% by 2030. We're starting in the UK and the US, and then going outside of that.
In a more hopeful sense, if we actually do what we need to do to meet 1.5 degrees and to limit every single tenth of a degree after that, it's going to be a very, very different world. It's not just about heat pumps, and it's not just about wind turbines. It's about changing our relationships with the economy, changes our ideas about growth, about equality, about the voices that people have in society, and for that change. Because even if we transition the energy system, we also have to transition the food system. Everything around us and all of the things that we consume are going to be very, very different. And that's what I wanted to do with this book. So I wanted to take the paired chapters of pessimism and hope, just to show how the situation is that we're looking at and what we can hope for change in the future. And by looking at that gap between where we're going and where we could be going to, really engender some hope and empowerment in people so that they could understand what that hopeful future is going to look like.
Because a lot of world leaders think about the climate crisis in a way that it's something that's going to happen in the future. And so the ones who are affected by the climate crisis have to be here reminding them that it's happening right now. And so we need bold climate action, not thinking about what is politically possible, but thinking about what we have to do in order to have a livable future. And so we have to think creatively and have our imaginations there to make sure that we get the right solutions.
Being part of a global movement, working together on a common agenda, it really creates a sense of belonging and accomplishment. And I think those two are essential for transformation. And that's what we want, and that's what we need. So with knowledge, with a platform, with a network, and with this sense of belonging, we can accomplish a lot. And that's where we're heading.
If I could say one thing that would have been Stuart's message to you, it's step up. Do whatever you need to do to bring this consciousness, this awareness front and center. Mobilize your friends, talk to your family. Climate change is not a political, bipartisan issue. The climate crisis affects everybody. So step up in Stuart's footsteps.
When I started my activism, I was only like 7 or 8 years old, and you could see when I would walk into politicians' offices to go lobbying, they would not look at me seriously because they're not used to seeing youth in this movement. And eventually, as I was going lobbying, I could see that I was having an impact on the politicians eventually, because since they're not used to seeing youth there, once they hear me talking and I used to draw drawings that would say climate change is real, or a carbon tax is a perfect solution with a little cat, and many other messages like that. And when I go back to their offices to this day, they still have those little drawings. And as you can see, that is having an impact on them. And I really think that, yes, we're being taken seriously by those politicians, but we also want to be taken seriously here at COP. And
we represent that voice of the Arab youth to make sure that this reaches to the right ears of our leaders, and also the leaders from the global north who can, use their diplomacy or, use their political power to translate those information to our leaders, to work together, to exchange ideas, together to bring that change we are looking at. So Arab Youth Climate Movement calls the leaders at the COP26 to work with our respective governments to make sure that, nobody's left around.
And I think a part of why we're making so much more progress at this COP
is because that which was academic 5 years ago is now people's reality. The fires in the West are the reality for peoples in the West. And oh, by the way, the fires in Australia are bigger. And oh, by the way, the fires in Siberia are even bigger than that. So people who could deny that this was theoretical are now having to confront it. And it's a good thing that's creating urgency, but I wish people would have listened to the science before it got to this point. To put that in context, this Build Back Better bill we're working on right now will create $550 billion in incentives for clean energy spread over 10 years. That's $55 billion a year. If we increase the Build Back Better bill by a factor of 10, we would still be subsidizing the fossil fuel sector to a greater degree than we're incentivizing clean energy. It's like we're trying to drive a car into the future and we got the emergency brake on.
Right, it's ridiculous. The 80 billion is how much we've subsidized fossil fuels since the start of COP26.
Oh.
I mean, just in this week, which is insane. So we have a tracker that we'll cue right now that we can show the audience. It's unbelievable how much has gone into the fossil fuel industry, and it's just a fraction of what we're contributing annually.
We need a natural metrics database in the world, and it starts with a digital land database. We have no land database. You cannot research who has done what crime to what forest. It's not transparent, although we have that for 25 years digital, and things should be transparent. The public sector has to open and has to give transparency that the private sector cannot hide and do crimes to the environment anymore.
Pretty much all of our communication was being done only in English. And the resources we were putting out, the tweets, the Instagram posts, everything was in English. And so I knew that we were leaving out a large group of people, my relatives included. And so that's when I decided to start my nonprofit, Climate Cardinals. And so Climate Cardinals is an international youth-led nonprofit working to make climate education more accessible to those who don't speak English. And the way we do this is by translating climate resources into over 100 languages. So starting from a viral TikTok video we had the first day that we launched that reached a couple 100,000 people, we've been able to grow our volunteer network to over 8,000 young people. Our average volunteer is just 16 years old, 8,000 young people in 41 countries around the world, and they translate climate information in exchange for community service hours.
The two biggest problems with the climate crisis is A, the climate crisis, and B, that we have not found yet a language to explain it.
We need to communicate climate action, because if only a few people or a few companies are doing climate action without communicating it to others, we will not solve the climate crisis, because people will not do the same. So it's an obligation for everyone that are acting on the climate, no matter if you're a business or if you're a private individual or if you're a government, you need to communicate it, exactly like the Nordic governments are doing here. We're having broadcasts from morning to noon about climate action. Everyone needs to do that, because that's the only way we can solve the climate crisis, is if we are having everyone to act. And in order to have everyone to act, we need to communicate what we're doing. So communication is actually equals climate action.